Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the March 14th, 2019 meeting of the Burlington Conservation Commission. Is there anyone in the audience for citizens' time or something they want to say about not on the agenda? You want to talk about something not on the agenda?
No, it's on the agenda.
You're on the agenda. Okay. Okay. Approval of minutes is the next item. That's item 3, February 28th. Are we in a position to approve it?
Yep, they look fine to me.
Motion to approve?
So moved?
Second?
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 0. All right. Next is item 4. Notice is given that the commission will hold a public meeting during which time a request for determination of applicability filed by Ki Cheng Yu and will be acted upon by the commission. The commission will take information related to the proposed trimming at 3 Arnold Terrace in Burlington and will thereafter issue a determination of applicability. Work would occur within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetative wetlands. The applications being heard pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act and Burlington Bylaw, Article 14, and the application materials available in the Conservation Office for public review. Hello there.
Hi.
So the way this works is you get to introduce yourself and state where you live, and then, for the record, and then you get to talk first.
Okay, thank you,
Okay,
Commissioner.
so the floor is yours.
Okay, so my name is Chi Cheng.
And pull the microphone a little closer.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. My name is Chi Cheng Yu. I live in 3 Arnold Terrace. I basically moved in June of 2016. This matter is regarding several pine trees in my backyard. I guess it's in the next year, basically 2017, there was a fairly big storm in the fall season. So there were a few very big branches falling down. It was from a oak tree, so that was when I started getting alarmed. Then when there's a big snow, of course, there will be broken branches. There's actually a magnolia tree in my front yard that was also in very bad shape because of the snow. So from then on, basically every time there's a strong wind, a storm, I do worry about what happens to the trees. So I guess when the house was built, there was some old or unhealthy trees cut down. So the ones that was referred to this time, they were, in my opinion, better protected back then. So they are tall pine trees. The lower part of the trunk is bare. Then on the top side, there's a lot of weight or leaves, whatever. They basically gets exposed now on the front side, and especially my neighbor to the right, they also had a fairly large bunch of trees taken down. So it basically, when I look at them, they are top heavy. So I had tree work done also. It was again 1 year and 3 months ago. There was again cutting some limbs, and there was one tree, one large maple taken down. This time, at that time, I actually talked to the person who worked for the conservation. We had a discussion of what can be done to these trees, so I'm aware that I need to preserve them and keep them alive, and if I do something to them, if in the event they die, I should replenish or plant new trees. So that's all taken into account in my proposal here. So I'm proposing to trim 5 tall pine trees, the top and around the top, in the way that with the intention to keep them alive. And basically, I will do whatever is is best from my opinion or from the tree workers' opinion to keep them alive. Take some weight from the top, but the goal is to keep them alive, because if they die, not only there's a environmental impact, they also have a fairly big financial impact to me, because taking the whole tree down is much more expensive than trimming it. So it is all my intention to keep them alive. So that's the first line. Then, in case they do not, I mean, obviously I'm not very knowledgeable about, I mean, what to do to keep them alive. I mean, in case I'm mistaken, if they do die, I will have basically do whatever the commission requires me to do to plant new trees to make up the situation. So basically, the goal is for me to sleep better at night. Obviously, the chance of something does happen, the tree does fall down, is very small, but I do want to hedge against that. So every time there's a storm, I don't have to worry about that much. So
Okay.
yeah.
That explains the rationale. Thank you. Eileen, comments first?
Well, I just wanted to give you just a little background. So as he explained, the house was built in 2015 or 2016. The previous applicant did come in front of you, and you issued an order of conditions at that time, because there is wetland right at the edge of the property. I had just made some copies of his proposal showing approximately which trees it is, just in relation to the flagged wetland. They are pines. One of them is right at the edge of the wetland, or very, very close to the edge of the wetland.
Okay. We probably have some opinions to talk about. Indra, you want to start? You have any comments or questions on this? Or you can pass and I can go back to you.
I pass.
That's fine. We can go back to you. You can always talk. Bill?
Well, I am concerned about whether topping the tree, as it's called, taking the top off, would affect the health of the tree. You said you've talked to tree workers about it. Are they actually arborists, do you know?
They are not certified arborists. It's just a tree company. So last time they worked on my property, so I quite trust them. So, but again, like I said, whatever I do, I cannot guarantee that something will not happen to the tree. I will. So there is the last page of
Yes.
my proposal is how I want to do this. I guess, again, this is not I'm not an expert, but my thinking is that if I keep the trunk as much as possible, basically not just cutting the trunk as much as I take off the branches, it's probably more likely to preserve the tree well. So that is my intention, just like I draw it on the right-hand side. So again, this is just like you said, and the tree workers said that topping off, basically just to cut the tree in half, is likely to kill it or do major harm to it. So basically, I want to keep the cuts small. So it's taking off the top will be just like take off a branch if I do it at when it's very small. So.
How much of the top are you intending to take off?
So
They're very tall
I do
trees.
have, in terms of, so I can only give a estimate of what, basically, if you just look at a proportion, it's probably less than 1/4 of the tree, less than 1/4 of the tree. Then when the tree worker gets to the top, they will know, they will judge if I cut there, how big that the diameter of the wound or the diameter of the trunk at that point is. So when, let's say it's greater than 1 foot, I mean, I will not do it. I mean, I will just stop where it's less than that or even less. Actually, I have not talked to him exactly about the tree yet. So if, I mean, you commissioners, if you have seen this kind of request before, you have experience on this, you can tell me how small that cut should be to make it safer, then I'll follow your instructions.
I don't have experience in cutting off the top. My opinion is that it's not going to be good for the tree. This type of a tree, the reason it's naked all the way up to the top is it's an emergent tree. It's trying to compete with everything around it, and the top sticks out above the oaks and maples that are in the vicinity.
Right.
So it's the top that is the very most active part of this tree.
Right.
And cutting it off, I don't think will be healthy for the tree, but I'm not an arborist either.
Right.
So I think we're going to suggest that you consult with an arborist before you do cut the tree,
Okay.
of the
Let's
trees.
see what everyone else has to
Yeah.
say.
Same thing, yeah, that's all.
Jennifer, you have anything new to add?
No, that was my recommendation as well, is that I think an arborist has to make an opinion on this because,
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
We are not expert on
do you
this.
have anybody to recommend?
Well, before we get there,
Okay.
let me make a few comments.
Okay.
The top 20% of the tree is where all the vegetation is, okay? In other words, you have a 100-foot tree, and those trees, because they're competing with the lower oaks, which would probably get taller if those other trees weren't there, has gone up higher. And I did a little research on it, just to see what I could find. I'm not gonna say I'm an expert, but I did some reading before I got here. And what I found was that the consensus among a few of the things that I read was that once you get beyond 6 inches, then the tree, it is going to have it's gonna weaken the tree, and it's going to 6-inch trunk at where you're cutting it. If the majority of the vegetation, in order for the tree to be strong, if you cut off that vegetation, that's where it gets its nourishment from, okay? And that's where you wanna cut. What usually happens when somebody does that, at least from all the literature that I read like 4 or 5 articles about it, is the center of the tree begins to rot. And so you might get some new vegetation at the top where the sun is, but what will happen is the tree will actually begin to rot. It makes it much more likely that the tree is going to weaken because of that rotting process, and it's going to actually more likely to either die or fall in the wind. In other words, it's stronger when it's getting the nourishment it needs and the food it needs from the vegetation. So, because there's no other vegetation on it, I think it's highly likely that the tree will die. And I'm just, I really do believe that. Now, the other alternative, a couple of alternatives, is, I have 2 alternatives to suggest. One is, the commission might consider you taking down some of the trees, rather than have you weaken the tree and have it fall and cost you even more money to deal with it, especially if it hits part of the house. That's one possible, we can consider it. I'm not sure about that, we can think about doing that. The other alternative is to talk to an arborist, 1, about topping the trees, but 2, whether the tree can be cabled. Oftentimes, when a tree is unstable, you would leave it the way it is, but you would have them cable it from one tree to the next, and it actually reinforces the tree so that makes it less likely that that's going to happen. So those are 2 suggestions worth investigating, but because all the vegetation is in the top 20% and you want to cut 25%, unfortunately, it's not good news. It's probably going to die.
So, Commissioner, what, the 2 suggestions you made, they are very good ones. I'm gonna follow up on them. I'll find out these options, whether I can
You
pursue them.
ask about cabling. They traditionally do that when they're concerned about certain trees are weaker than others.
Right,
And a heavy cable could be run, they run them like this and then like this, and it stabilizes sort of a stack of trees. So usually they do it for branches on a tree.
Right, I've had it done with branches
Okay,
on it.
I've had it done on a couple of my trees.
Yep.
And it helps stabilize it so it doesn't get as much sway to it.
okay. So I will definitely pursue that.
Yeah.
The cutting down option, I will also consider. But the reason that I did not propose that way is, number 1, obviously, it's one less tree. Number 2 is the cost associated with it.
Of
I know
course.
that's
I
very
know.
expensive. to take
Unfortunately,
the
that's the-
heavy part of it, yeah.
That's right. And I think if you get an arborist, I think if he's suggesting that cutting off all the vegetation, the tree is likely to survive, I think you ought to tell him he has to come and talk to us about it. I mean, I just don't believe that's gonna be the case, unfortunately. And you won't achieve what you're trying to achieve is a tree that's gonna stay stable and strong, stay alive, and not fall. And you're gonna do that by removing all the vegetation at the top. I think it's actually you're gonna get the opposite effect. It's gonna weaken the tree, it's gonna rot down the middle, and it's more likely you're gonna end up cleaning up the whole tree anyway.
I see.
And
So-
hopefully it doesn't hit your house when it does come down.
Yeah, so I'll get back to that. So in terms of cabling, if you can see, go back to the second page from last. I marked the position of the 5. It's, again, approximate, but for the 4 on the right, it's all clustered. I mean, it's a very good proposal or suggestion. I'll look into cabling them.
Yeah,
So there's one on the left.
yes.
That one is it actually has some oak trees around it. So again, I will look into that. So that's definitely, before I do anything, I will look into that.
Now, I do note that there are some substantial hardwood trees, smaller hardwood trees around these trees. And if you ended up removing it and clearing it out, it would actually probably promote the growth of a hardwood tree, which are stronger trees in general.
Yes.
So that might,
Yes.
it's just an argument for actually
Okay.
remove, I'm not saying I'm not saying we should remove trees. I'm just saying that it's not all a downside because you have fairly substantial hardwood trees around it that would probably grow taller.
Yeah. So that whole area is, basically, it's wood. So whatever spaces opens up, trees will grow. I mean, again, like I said, if something does die, then I will plant. Now, going back to the amount of trimming.
Yes.
So this diagram I had on the last page.
Yes.
When I say a quarter, what I said is less than a quarter, so I know that the distance I'm going to trim or cut down will be less than a quarter. But more illustrative is what's on this page regarding how much the vegetation I intend to cut. So actually, the 5 trees, they have different amount of vegetation I mean leaves on them. So this, I guess what I draw here is probably like 1/3 being cut off.
Unfortunately, the chances are when someone tops a tree,
Yeah.
they normally don't go to a 100-foot tree and trim 5 feet off or 8 feet off. They don't do that. Most times, whenever I've heard of anybody doing this, it's a substantial fraction of the tree. Unfortunately, you have the last 15 feet is where the vegetation is. And, I mean, it looked like there was very little vegetation for the first 70 feet, 75 feet, 80 feet. It's hard to tell.
So like I said, each tree has different amount of vegetation on them, out of the 5. This diagram I have indicates whatever amount of vegetation is on there, what I want to take off is about 1/3. So, yeah,
And I hear you.
yeah,
I just don't, if you're actually trimming it that little, which is a fairly small amount, it was what you're saying, only the third of the existing vegetation, you're not removing that much weight. I'm not sure it's going to make it less likely that the tree.
but it's from the top, so the position of what I remove also matters. Okay, so,
I'm not sure we really know.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
talking of opinions here, so,
yeah,
yeah.
okay,
Okay, so,
But I think with the, looking at the long-term safety of your house, health of the trees, and total cost to yourself, it would be wise to invest in an arborist to
Okay.
give you the advice on how to do all of that for the
Yep.
best package.
Yep.
And we're not capable of evaluating the full impact on the tree like an
I
arborist.
see.
certified arborist.
Right, a certified
Certified
arborist.
arborist.
Yes.
So it feel comfortable also,
okay,
if he comes and talk to
I
us.
have one comment, though, about the tree on the left. That's actually well within the 20-foot no disturb.
Yeah.
So to consider taking that one down at all would be a different consideration for us. That
Right.
wetland, that closest to the wetland is a 20-foot no disturb at all. You can't do anything within that distance. So that one, we would have different reservations about doing anything
Okay.
to. Now, cabling it would be fine, because that's only gonna help it to stay in place. If you could tie it to another tree, I don't think we would have an issue with doing that within the no disturb zone, but topping it or cutting it would be something within the no disturb zone.
At one time, I did look at the wetland map. So that tree today, in my opinion, being a problem is because what's on my neighbor's lot has been taken down. Otherwise, this tree will not be exposed to the wind at all.
Right.
It has all the trees around. I mean, especially in front of it, I mean, that's the direction to my house. But right now, because those trees from my neighbor's lot, they have been taken down, this one looks like very standing alone, so that's my concern.
Yes, trees don't really live as individuals, they live in a community, and that group of trees is one living organism. If you weaken some of it, the rest of them will get weakened, even if you don't touch them. So that's what's happened, I think, in that situation, perhaps.
Okay. So maybe, Commissioner, can we do a 1, 2, 3 step? I mean, I will follow your suggestion to this first, then this, then this. But in the bottom of everything, so if I do get your permission to do this, there is basically maybe an article of, if a tree die, what do I do? What other trees I need to plant, right? So can we do this 1, 2, 3? We need to do these steps, or are we just
The first step is getting to a decision,
Right.
okay? And we can talk about the details of the decision. But getting to a decision is going to require that you get a certified arborist to write something up, and if he's proposing that we can top the trees and remove the vegetation, he has to come to the meeting, because I think we're going to have a lot of questions.
Okay, so whether or not he need to come to the meeting, does that depend on how much vegetation was taken off?
I would let the office decide
Okay.
on, we're not going to each individually
Yep.
be, give you a hard time about it.
Yep.
Normally, what you do is, they will tell you that he really ought to come, or it's not necessary,
Okay,
okay?
Yep.
And they'll make that decision, and they'll talk with you about it,
all right, thank you.
okay? So, if we can put you on for the next agenda, if you can't make it until the one after that, instead of 2 weeks, we can see you in 4 weeks, that's fine. We can just continue it till then.
Okay, so basically, from now to the next meeting would be for me to consult a arborist?
Yes.
Okay,
Right, but the thing is, you need the announcement, public notice goes out, the agenda is set, 1 week ahead of time?
We typically do it, but you can change it up to 48 hours.
Up to 48 hours, okay.
We just do ours early.
Oh, okay, all right, so
That's very
you gotta get it in time so we can get an agenda together.
okay, so
Okay, so-
what time are we talking about to get the opinion?
Well, early in the week, 2 weeks from now. Sorry, what's the date of the next one? 28th? So, like the 23rd? No,
So we'll
the
put it-
Monday of that.
So what we'll do is, we'll put it on the agenda, and if it needs to
Put
be
it on the agenda.
continued, it will be continued.
Exactly, let's do that.
Yeah, that's better off, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
so,
can do that.
yeah, so we'll put you on the agenda, but if it has to be continued, just let the office know, and we'll go for the 2 weeks after that,
Okay,
okay?
okay, thank you.
Very
So-
good, thank you.
I appreciate it. So, there's a side note, sorry to take up your time. Actually, I received a letter, I received an invoice from one of the newspaper article asking me to pay. Does that have to do with the town? To pay for,
For the to pay for the legal ad that went into did I not warn you about that? I'm sorry.
okay, so, all right, so, yeah, I didn't know that. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So I should be all set for today, right?
You're all set for tonight, and
Yeah.
perhaps we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you all. Commissioner.
All right,
you very
thank
much
you for
for
your
coming.
time, sir. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing. It was a request for amendment to a wetlands permit. This is for 36 Mill Street. Beverly Van Nostrand is the applicant, reconfiguring a subdivision and adding a lot, and it's being heard under the Burlington Wetland Bylaw. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
It's been a long time since we've seen you,
Couple of years?
at least. All right, so We have, most of us, I believe, have been on this property before, and so we know what it looks like. And the hearing was opened a couple of weeks ago, and after you guys introduce yourselves for the record, I guess, why don't we give you some opportunity to say what you've submitted?
Stephen Dresser, Williamson Way.
Beverly Van Nostrand, 36 Mill Street.
As stated, this is a continuance of a public hearing. We're seeking an amendment to a prior order of conditions. We did go through the plan at the prior hearing, and we made the revisions that were requested on that evening. I did submit kind of a little summary of what we did. One of the primary things was we were asked to kind of evaluate the rain garden. We did so and provided some drain calculations. It actually holds up to the 100-year storm, primarily because when they did testing on the prior one, they found that there were sandy soils out there. So we were able to take advantage of that exfiltration. With the knowledge of ledge there in the design, we actually used the slower infiltration rate, which you would find for loamy sand, even though it was categorized as a gravelly sand, just for precaution because of known bedrock in the area. We revised the plan in the green areas to include 11 red maples. It was, we were hoping that we could provide some trees. We did that. We added a planting schedule, and we kind of put a little bit better graphic on the plan too.
Excuse me for 1 second. You can sit up here if you'd like, and you can see that better, yeah. Sure.
We graded the plan to more accurately depict that the grade goes towards the rain garden, that those, the two driveways will pitch in toward that rain garden. We included some sub-catchment plans to show, you know, the area that does go in there. Very large. Ledge hill on the side, so it does flow kind of in both directions down to that driveway into the rain garden. We added a post and rail fence along the rain garden. The driveway's relatively close to that, just to make sure that there's no accidentally driving into there. And we added a note to the plan, preserve trees if possible, to use care while you're doing that. Personally, I would think they may do smaller houses than are shown on those plans once the people, you know, I don't think Beverly's gonna build them. Probably likely sell them to a builder who I think might build smaller houses, just because the power lines right there are probably not conducive to the, you know, the cost that a large house would be. If that happens, I think we can do most of that in the tree cutting. Right now, it's not quite. Anyway, that sums it up. Any other questions?
Okay.
I'd answer.
All right, good, thank you. Eileen, do you have comments? Is there anything, are you satisfied with what's been submitted so far? And is there any outstanding issues?
I think that Mr. Dresser addressed everything that you asked of him the last time. This is, because there's 3 houses, this is definitely a bigger alteration in the riverfront than the previous order permitted. But as he said, there's a chance that that might actually be less if they build smaller houses. It's all in the outer riparian, and I appreciate the fact that he put the post and rail fence in to protect the rain garden. I think that was a good addition. I don't really have any additional concerns.
So you don't have any reservations that a new notice of intent should have been filed because of the major expansion?
No, I think that I think that the original conditions cover most of what we would be concerned about, what you would generally be concerned about.
Okay.
You were very thoughtful with your previous conditions.
As we always are. All right, all right. So next we'll see if there's any additional questions that come up from the commissioners, and if there's someone in the audience that has a question, we can certainly hear from that person as part of the public hearing. Do you want to go now, or?
Let them finish.
Okay, well, we're gonna go around first, and then, we're gonna go to you if you have comments or questions.
My husband may, he had a meeting, but he may try to make it, so, you go ahead, you might not, but I'll be prepared.
Okay, that's fine. All right, Jennifer, do you have anything else?
I'm happy to see that the rain garden capacity was increased, because I know that was a huge concern, because apparently that street gets flooded quite a bit, so I think that's a good improvement, and I certainly hope that they will build smaller houses, whoever the builder is, but I know that you guys don't have any say over that, so it's just me saying it out loud, hopefully someone will hear it and listen, so that's all I have to add.
Okay. All right, Bill?
I was also wondering about the rain garden. This is actually increased since the previous drawing, or is it just a little different shape on this drawing than it was before?
It's a little different shape, but more than anything, the calculations were done to ensure that it
Calculations
would be sized
okay.
properly, you know.
Yeah.
I think the big thing is it's not just a 2-year storm, it is a
Yeah,
large storm.
that's good. What used to be the 100-year storm and is now the every other year storm. Yes, and I see the first driveway is trenched now as well, graded to the trench on the left of it, so that's an improvement. One question I had on the planting plan, just because I was looking at it, I mean, I like the fact that you've got significant amount of new plants going in and you've added some trees, but looking at the drawing, the number of witch hazels in the little legend at the top, it says total witch hazels is 4. And yet there's like 18 or so shown in the drawing. I just want to make sure that somebody doesn't look at 4 and use that as the purchase order when you really need 18. Yeah, I counted 18.
What sheet is that? Yeah, that one apparently never got revised.
Okay. Just want to make sure it doesn't get, like I said, that somebody copies that and goes and buys the plants and that's all they have on hand.
Right.
So, can you get a revised drawing into the office on that one?
Yes,
Okay,
That was the only
it's
comment.
18 for the record.
all right. Okay, just exactly the number of pictures you counted.
Yes.
All right, anything else?
No.
So how many red maples you have? I think
11.
You've written 11, but on the plan,
It's the biggest circles.
No, there's 11 on the plan. They'd be the
I did
bigger
count
ones.
11.
oh,
So
I read
there's
the numbers.
4 up the top, 2 in between the 2 houses.
oh, yeah, okay,
3
yes, I
on the
got
bottom.
it. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
anything else?
no,
Okay. I have 2 questions. One is, Mr. Dresser, what fraction of both driveways between, you know, that where how much of the driveways are draining into the rain garden?
I mean, it drains from where you see those spot grades, so, I mean, it's gotta be 90+% on those 2.
Does it go all the way up near the homes? Are they gonna?
Oh, yeah, yes, yep. All that driveway, all the way. If you look at the plan, you know, there's a high point, basically this ledge. Everything else flows this way. Where those 2 ledge line, there's kind of a peak right there. So it's actually almost a bowl. So the entire, from the garages to the bottom are all draining to the rain garden.
So do you have any notes in your plans about the grading of the driveway to make that happen? Is there anything on your plans that
Well, I mean, the grades on the plan.
you think,
build it
you
as
feel
per
that's
the grading
sufficient?
plan. Yeah,
So the asphalting guy won't
correct.
have a problem?
Yeah. I mean, you almost can't because of the existing terrain out there. That's how it does now.
You almost don't have a choice, what you're
You
saying.
almost don't have a choice. Up there, the critical part's gonna be down by the rain garden to make sure it doesn't.
And the rain garden, of course, is the low end, so.
Right.
All right,
So the trick for the paving guy is making sure that pitches down at the bottom goes that way.
Is any further note needed for clarification to make sure that happens?
It's noted on there to grade to rain garden with some spot elevations.
Okay,
6. On the grading and drainage plan, sheet 6.
yeah, I'm on that now. I was trying to find it, actually.
Right on the driveway, it says grade to rain garden, and then the spot elevations on the side indicate
Good
that.
question.
And maybe I'm not on the, And it's clear that up near the house, that will drain to it as well?
Just from those grades, yeah, yeah. And again, you can't, up there, that's how it has to go, because that's how the terrain goes. It all pitches down, this is almost
All right.
a
Okay,
panel where the driveways are.
all right. I mean, it's your engineering, so I'm taking I'm taking your word for it. That's fine. And the other question I had is, everything within the road, is it correct to say that everything within the erosion control line is being completely cleared to prepare for the construction?
It's, yeah.
Is there any chance, did you give any thought to any of the larger trees that might be worth targeting on the plan to save, mature trees?
Again, we noted to, care shall be given to preserve as many trees as possible within the limit of work. There's a note
Is there a note on that somewhere?
There is, yeah, yeah.
Yes. Okay,
Within the limit of work, okay, good, yeah.
but you can't make promises because that involves a discussion with the contractor.
Correct.
Can I just ask a question? My name is Amanda Hyman, and I'm her neighbor.
Before you talk, Amanda what?
Hyman,
And what's your address?
38 Mill Street.
Thanks, okay. Then we had to get that out of the way.
Okay. We bought the house and was at the last hearing back in 2016 when it was proposed for 2 lots. But my concern is I have a garage, and one of these large trees is very close to my garage, and the roots may disturb my garage.
Okay.
So I need to know, and we haven't had that discussion. I just flew back in for this meeting from North Carolina visiting my dad, and we share a tree.
Could you point out where that tree is, maybe, on the drawing? Just
Well, and she just gave me this.
roughly.
Okay,
Roughly.
yes. I don't wanna lose any trees. I had one tree that went down,
course.
unfortunately, due to the storm. So my house is sort of here, and if there's a, the existing house is like here. There's a large tree right at the back of my garage, and the roots are there. So the prior owner, they could not cut that tree down. They were told when they built the garage, they had to stay there. So if any trees come down, there's one that's in front of my garage, and there's one in the back. And I'm afraid that if those trees go down, it's gonna affect my garage and the structural damage to my garage,
Okay.
because they are huge.
Are you afraid if they were taken down as part of the construction, you mean?
I'm
or-
concerned with the foundation of my garage because the roots grow deep. Now, the one that I had removed, I just still have the stump pretty much there, but this is one that is larger, and just like you were talking with the other gentleman, the same thing happened. That it toppled, and they were cutting down pieces, and over time, it just left a stem. And on the 28th of when we had that windstorm, that remaining with nothing on the top came down. Luckily, I just had to get it removed, and it didn't cause any structural damage.
Do the roots go under your garage on the tree
Yes.
you're talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know where the tree is, so it's hard to answer that. If it's on her property at all, we don't have the right to cut it down.
And we kind of share, because the lines on there, as Beverly, we walk, there are some large trees that are on the property line. So
Whose tree is it, you know?
I don't know.
Oh,
It's our tree?
No, I don't think anyone knows. That has to be determined because it's on the property line. We share the trees. And,
So should trees on the line be spared?
so,
yes.
Yeah, I mean,
That
but-
makes
but
sense.
the tree can be spared. The issue, quite honestly, is that you have utilities going up there.
I was
So
just
That's
gonna
my
say,
thing,
the
and
sewer
water-
line is going right along that.
All the water
boundary.
lines are back up to my property. I love Beverly, and she said the houses should have been gone years ago. Had I known this, I would have never purchased a house, because that wasn't told to us at the closing. It was but I'm going from having one neighbor to now possibly 3.
that's correct.
And they get to enjoy my nature of my lot, which is all wooded, and it will be preserved. That's our concern, not alone, I understand it's her property, do what she chooses, but I don't want any trees down, and we've had someone to come out and arborists to look and see which trees that needed to be down and the cost that's incurring. But all of this and the water lines and all that, that means disruption for my life till I decide to move.
All right.
I
So,
think you need to,
Go ahead.
the staff would have inspection prior to any installation of utilities to make sure that,
Yeah, could we also say that you will, the 2 trees she's talking about, there's 2 trees? Could you mark those trees in the field so the contractor clearly knows?
we'll be marked, we'll be staking that property line without question, to make sure that, because the utilities are relatively
And if
close
it is your tree, and there is a concern, a legitimate concern, after you have to look at it, obviously.
Right.
And the other thing, oh, that's the trees, but
Yeah,
there's,
but-
oh, go ahead.
Hang on one second, let's finish this one.
Okay.
It would seem to me it would be useful for the contractor if you had to mark it in the field, and when the discussions with the contractor take place, ask them to make sure ask them if they think they can preserve the tree, if it's in your property. If it's in her property, then,
Yeah, my experience is I would include your staff in that
yes,
discussion.
that would be good. So could we, Eileen, have something in the order of conditions that says, addresses this, some wording that addresses this?
Yep.
Okay. Does that sound reasonable? That discussion will be,
Yes, yeah. Because well, the thing is, we live there, and I can mark the time for the deer who crosses over. That was the reason we didn't ever get a fence, and they cross over, and also my beagle knows their time frame. Any walls or anything will affect the wildlife that's there. It affect my living and reason why I wanted a wooded lot. The other thing is that there's some large boulders that are very close there in the back of the property that we share.
I remember.
Yeah, so those will have to be considered, and all, even the foot line and all this, the folks who inherited this proposal go through, they get to share my backyard.
They do.
Yeah, so it's a concern, because that's not
They
what I
can't
bought
monitor,
the house
just
for.
visually, yes.
Well, but still, sir,
They get to
I know
enjoy it.
visually, they get to enjoy it, because it's
Yeah, right.
nature.
And what would you suggest?
Well, I'm not suggesting, I don't have any problem, as I told Beverly, having 2 lots, but going from 1 to 3, that's a bit much.
She
It
has
was
3 lots.
always 3.
But it was, the proposal was not what the commission was
The
on.
original proposal, because there were some issues
Yes.
on whether they could get permission from the utility.
It
Is
wasn't,
that,
it wasn't a conservation issue, it was a common driveway issue, the building
Right.
department wouldn't allow them to
So
do
if they
that.
could-
So
you
they
can
have
move
an, they have an approved subdivision plan with 3 lots on it.
I agree, but if you want to move it closer to the power line, have no problem.
We're at the,
Yeah.
that's as close as you can to the, that pink line, the pink dash line, that's the easement of the power line. They own, they have an easement beyond where the wires are.
they don't want buildings on it.
I understand. The
Right.
other issue is I've looked into my research on the tear downs. Burlington has not built a house under 3,000 square feet when there's a tear down. My house is 3,100 square feet, so you're saying small houses, that is not gonna happen.
I'm saying smaller than those are up to 4,500 square feet, the big ones there. I'm saying likely they're probably gonna be on that small side of that 3,000.
But still, I.
Think about the
yeah.
size of your house if
My
yours is
house,
30.
I understand, it's 31, but it's been existing, and I have the backyard and the front yard.
Unfortunately, some things we regulate.
I know.
And unfortunately, a lot of things we don't. And the fact that they might put a fence up, a post and rail fence, and destroy sort of like the scenic
Well, also the
aesthetics of it, I mean,
wildlife,
it's
yeah.
like, we don't control that.
I understand, but I'm just saying that some of the issues that were issued before about, if they corrected the water reserve issue, I know that whenever I'm digging in my backyard just to plant something, it is very sandy, it's a lot of rocks and stuff, so I'm going to feel the effect of anything. 2, that's fine, but 3, and especially the tree areas and the big boulders in the back, I would prefer that.
The lot, we walked through the lots a couple of times, and the lots are beautiful in back there. Unfortunately, it's privately owned land,
I understand, sir.
and
Voicing my concern, because that's what, yeah.
I'm glad you're free to come do that, and we will be happy to listen to you. It's just, some things are not our responsibility, unfortunately, so. But the trees that are right next to your garage, I think we can take a careful look at that with the staff,
I agree.
okay? And they'll arrange for a meeting. It will be in the order of conditions, Eileen, correct?
I'm adding an additional.
And if there's any concern at all, I think, obviously, if it can be preserved, it will be.
Yeah, and I thank Beverly for his forgiveness to me. This, I got my notice a little late because we were working, and some of my neighbors, their concern is that, oh, you won't be, you're about the only one who will be affected, but it will affect the nature and the lots in the back. So it's just not me, but I'm just gonna be more so, not only the construction, but my concern is I don't want any
Yeah,
structural.
and our reaction when we walked on it was really nice. It's a beautiful piece of property. We said, wouldn't it be nice if there was no building on it? But, I mean, that's not gonna happen.
No, and like I said, Beverly, you know, we like our neighbors, we're fortunate, but it's just a concern that I have as a homeowner.
Understood. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your comments.
I do appreciate that you have concerns for your other neighbors, like the deer and the wildlife as well. I mean, that's
Oh, yeah.
something I'd like to look
Yeah,
at.
The deer, the raccoons, and
Rabbits.
the rabbits as well as the turkeys. And as people build, that's less space for them.
And one fence can affect the
Oh, I know.
wildlife corridor completely, you know, where they used to travel, so it is a,
And they do,
it
they
is a
cross
concern.
over it
Yeah.
every day,
Right.
right in front of her property and they go in the back of mine.
Yeah,
To the springs of rain.
they come right beside the
So
house.
anyways, does anyone have anything else? If nothing further, we have a decision?
We do.
Okay, so please, why don't we, do they have a draft of it?
They're about to.
Okay.
Okay, so this is an amendment to the original bylaw application, the bylaw permit.
Yes.
It was under the bylaw only.
Yes.
The proposed amendment is for building 3 single-family houses with associated utilities rather than the 2 permitted in the previous decision, building 3 driveways rather than the 2 permitted in the previous decision, altering a total of 17,556 square feet in the riverfront area rather than the 9,000 square feet permitted in the previous decision. The original application was filed by Robert Ahern. As the proposed work was within the riverfront, under the bylaw only, as the proposed work was within the outer riverfront area of an intermittent locally regulated stream. The next part is just a filing history. It gives the dates of when you came in front of us. It references each plan, all of which were updated to reflect the ones that we got this week, but may have to be tweaked if I'm getting something else. Stephen, will you have to give me another plan to just show the 18
They're
changes?
gonna update the,
Just got that one change on
Okay.
18.
And then under conditions, we are, as I said before, the conditions that you imposed the last time were pretty detailed. So all of those still stand. They are not modified and they remain in effect. The amended conditions are 27, the maintenance of the roof and driveway infiltration systems and the rain garden shall be detailed in a revised stormwater operations and maintenance plan to be submitted and approved before construction commences. This condition will be noted on the certificate of compliance as existing in perpetuity. An operation and maintenance plan had been submitted with the previous application, but not with this one. And then I've drafted, or I'll be putting something in the wording along the lines of trees likely to be damaged by utility work shall be marked and the contractor or applicant shall confer with conservation staff to determine the best manner of protection. I'll maybe tweak that wording.
I think you
but
wanna
something
say
along those
trees on the property line between 36 and 38 Mill Street are to be reviewed for saving, and with a meeting held out in the field prior to construction. Does that, Mr. Dresser, does that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. And under the findings, could you add one of the findings that a concern was expressed by the neighbor at 38 Mill Street? So it's right up front on the findings, over large tree adjacent to the garage on 38 Mill Street, whose roots go under the garage, something like that.
It's 38 Mill, right?
38 Mill,
38.
right. That way it draws enough attention that they have to pay attention to it before they construct.
That's fair. Whose roots go into the garage? Okay. I can do that.
Okay? All right, is there anything else? All right, then, could I have a motion then to close the hearing for the project under the bylaw at 36 Mill Street?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? 400. Could I have a motion to adopt the findings and amended conditions under Burlington Bylaw Article 14 for 36 Mill Street?
Moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 400. What, on the bond, how much?
How much was, the bond is as it was previously,
Okay,
which I don't remember.
okay, how much
It's
was
in
it?
here.
I think it was 20.
What did you say at that time? 3,000.
2,000. Anybody have any thoughts? We've gone to 3, and now there's a rain garden and so forth.
An additional house.
What, an additional
And
house?
An additional house, right.
Right,
So, should probably be increased.
make a proposal.
I say, propose it to make it 4,000,
4,000?
yeah. Just because of the additional work that from the original application.
All right, okay. Could I have a motion to require the posting of a $4,000 performance bond taken under Burlington Bylaw Article 14 for the project as described at 36 Mill Street?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 400. Okay. Anything else anyone needs here?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you selected a contractor yet?
No, I haven't. TV World.
Okay.
No, I haven't.
I'm friendly with a contractor. If you care, I'll just tell them to give you a call.
Sure. No, I just wanted to get everything done this time before contractors, because every time I get a contractor, it's a condition, and then it's a 2-year, 3-year process.
Right,
We still need to get a license from Eversource.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm gonna,
That's one more step we
Right.
may, we're discussing with the planning board about, they might need to amend their decision as well.
right, right. Well, good luck with your project.
thank you.
All right.
Thanks for everything.
Entirely welcome. All right, so we have 2 more signatures. All right, so next on the agenda, are you moving out of town?
Probably. I'll probably go to New Hampshire, closer to my other son.
Very nice up there.
Yeah, but I know one son doesn't want to leave.
All right, well,
The house is falling down.
all right, good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, next, administration, planning board comments? Anything?
We do not have anything right now.
Okay, subcommittee and staff reports?
I don't have any subcommittee or staff reports, but I just want to mention that the trustees have requested that they be able to come in front of you to make a presentation about a conservation restriction for Mary Cummings Park. So I've tentatively penciled them in for the next meeting,
Okay,
just if we have time.
okay. Upcoming meetings, March 28th and April 11th. Anything else?
Nope.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? 400. That was unanimous. All right, good evening.